Hello and welcome to Race Department's iRacing Le Mans Series, the 2012 Summer Tour. We're at Watkins Glen for the second of 5 rounds. It's 2 hours of Watkins Glen. Alongside me in the booth is Sean Petchin, and we're thrilled to bring this to you today. This is the second round. One round was already at the books. That was the 2 hours of Sebring. Martin Blaise won that in Prototype 2. Davis Braun came second. Lasse Brun Hansen was third. Dmitry Sivkov fourth, and Ronnie Fantini was fifth. Farouk Manzar and Bryce Weir showed early promise, but crashed out. In the Corvette C6R, Yuri Gidson won the race and leads the points. Tia Bubacek was second. Tom Van Putt third. Marco Buhin fourth, and Eric Hafner fifth. This will be a big points day for the Corvettes, as Yuri is not with us today. In the Ford GTs, Bjorn Spindle dominated the Sebring race after pretty much dominating Neil Hecken's Escorts Le Mans series in the prototypes. Very flexible driver indeed. Duarte Perez is second in Ford GT, David Jordan third, Satoru Ono in fourth, and Dennis Garrison fifth. Your starting lineup for today's race: Gary Feekins in the 22 Advan Honda ARX01C is on pole with a 129.991. Ivan Gomez with 71 HPD is on the outside pole at a 3270. Lasse Brun Hansen is third in the number 28 Highcroft Racing machine. Fourth is Ronnie Fantini in the 19. Hampus Andersson is fifth in the 99 BMW Honda ARX01C. I'll let you work your head around that one. Starting sixth is Martin Blaise. Seventh, Nathan Robinson. Eighth, Dmitry Sivkov. 9th, Jason Elrod. 10, Soren Mogensen. 11th, Rob Kuss. And 12th, Bryce Weir. On GT1 pole is Latko Bralic in the 23 Chevrolet Corvette C6R, the blue front and the black rear. On the outside pole for the Corvettes is Hannes Thaler in the 11 GM Chevy Corvette. Tia Bubacek, your second place in points, will start third in the Corvettes. Marco Buhin will start fourth. Eric Hafner fifth. And Martin Silva rounds out your Corvette field. Bjorn Spindle starts on pole in the Ford GTs on a 143.862. David Jordan is your outside pole sitter in the 85 Ford GT on a 44.070. Kenny Duval in the number 1 Ford GT starts third on a 44.544. Dean Allen starts fourth. Silas Grainer fifth. Charles Huffstetler is sixth, and Andy Baker starts seventh. Braden Whitaker will start from the pit lane in the Honda. As we are now coming through the toe of the boot on our first of, well, one warm-up laps really, and we see Gary Feekins facing the field as he should do. Sean, any quick words before we get this thing started?
No, not overly. It's a fun track. The laps go by quick. It's going to be a sprint for 2 hours with a lot of these cars on the very edge. So probably see a few incidents here and there, but otherwise it should be a blast for the drivers.
Yep, 2 hours should be 2 pit stops for each class. The walls are very tight here at Watkins Glen. There are no small mistakes. Expect if you see a car to spin off that it will be a very big incident. We're especially hoping to see a clean start and clean through the S's on the first time through, as we have seen probs there before in other series, but with the same cars. As we now see the Ford Mustang pace car pull ahead of the field and pull into the pit lane. Gary Feekins holds the field back, looking to really balking the start, really. Through the final turn 11. And we are green at Watkins Glen. Green flag, 2 hours is go, as Feekins jumps out to a very nice lead, actually. Almost a second already on the second place of Ivan Gomez. Looks like a clean start so far. Everybody's made it through turn 1, at least in the prototypes. The Corvettes are now boiling through turn 1 as well. Latko Bralic leads there, and they've all made it through cleanly as well. Bjorn Spindle leads in Ford GT in the 89, and they have all made it through turn 1 as well. So it's a clean start, at least through turn 1. And it looks like a clean start all the way through the S's as well, as Gary Feekins now boils down towards turn 5, the carousel.
Yeah, it was a good start for Gary there. Got a nice jump. That's exactly what you want, especially heading into that really dangerous turn one right-hander.
Yeah, absolutely. So easy to get run into the back there. Gary's still with commanding lead over Ivan Gomez. Ivan, not really looking at the best as he goes wide in the toe of the boot. So that's holding up the prototypes behind him now, and it really does look like he's holding up the prototypes behind him. He got a good qualifying lap in, but it doesn't look like his race pace is quite there. Zlatko Bralic in the 23 Corvette is under assault from the 11 of Hannes Thaler for the GT1 lead as they head into the heel of the boot. And Bjorn Spindle and David Jordan in 89 and 85 are pulling away from the Ford GT field. But up front, Gary Feekins in the 22 HPD will lead the first lap, and it will be a very large gap indeed. It is 3 seconds over Ivan Gomez after one lap. So that was a very good start and a very good first lap for Feekins.
Yeah, that was impressive. 3 seconds there. It's what was even more impressive is that all the cars made it through. It appears through lap one. Obviously, some had some pace in qualifying that they don't have right now. Is not transitioning well, but yeah, I mean that's just a real shock to see a 2.8 right out of the gate like that.
It is, as Hampus Anderson in the 99 is looking at the inside of Ivan Gomez. Can't make it stick though. The lead in GT1, jumping back a bit, is just 3 car lengths. We don't bother measuring the time at that point. As is the lead from GT2 is 89. Bjorn Spindle has about 10 car lengths over David Jordan. Hampus Anderson now under attack from Lasse Brun Hansen in the 28 Highcroft Racing HPD, as really outside of the lead of Hondas, outside of the lead of the Prototype 2s, it's a very close race. Put all the cars under a blanket, really. Gomez now getting just a little bit of a separation for himself in that 71 Honda. Now looks to have about a second on Hampus Anderson.
Yeah, it looks like the cars are spreading out pretty nicely here, so it's, you know, everybody sets in. It's a long race, just establish some laps, you know, find out how the car is going to run deep into a stent, and then obviously, you know, you can go from there and make your adjustments that you need to. But yeah, nothing obviously going to be too hair on fire here, as there is still a ton of time.
Yeah, absolutely. And saying hello to everybody that's in the chat right now. I see Bram, I see Ron, I see George. Just a reminder, we also have a chat running at ETV Live. That's etv-eplay.net. Click on the road stream 2. Back up front, Gary Feekins in the 22 HPD. That Advan liveried car still holds a tremendous advantage over the rest of the field, 3.5 seconds over second place Ivan Gomez. Zlatko Bralic is still under assault for the lead of GT1, and it's really now bumper to bumper for Bralic and for Bubacek. That's 23 from 50. Bjorn Spindle in the 89 and Ford GTs has pulled a bit of a gap for himself now, 1.2 seconds ahead of the 85 of David Jordan. As we start to see the field spread out a bit, as Sean said, apart from the lead, which is still 3.5 seconds, about a second between each car in Prototype 2. The Corvette's much closer, just half a second separating the two leaders, then a further second back to third place, and quite a bit farther back to the remainder of the Corvette field. And we've had an incident for the 11 of Hannes Thaler, who has lost something on the order of, call it 12 seconds on this lap. The 11 of Hannes Thaler, we'll figure out what happened to him. Bjorn Spindle still leads in GT2 with 1.2 seconds again on David Jordan. Dean Allen in the number 3 for GT is 3 seconds further back and is followed closely by the number 1 of Kenny Duval. Silas Grainer is 3 seconds further back, followed by Andy Baker and Charles Hufstetler. That is your running order. It looks like Hannes Taylor in the 11, just over-ambitious, diving into the boot. Rear end steps out, and the car just does that sort of helpless 90-degree slide. Not much you can do about that except ride it out and hope you don't collect anybody. Did a good job to lock the brakes and keep it parked, but not the way he wanted to start his race.
Yeah, definitely something that's, you know, there's a good save by him to not lose that car. But again, with these Corvettes especially, you can really throw them around through these corners here at Watkins Glen. It's actually a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. But it is incredibly easy when you're having that much fun to just step over that line just a little bit. Now up to 4 seconds at the front of the field for Gary Feekins. But the most interesting battle on track is between the 23 of Zlatko Bralic and the 50 of Teo Bubacek. That is just 0.2 of a second, really just 2 car lengths at this point, for the lead of this race. As we see Teo looking around the outside of the carousel, trying to look for something, some way to make space, nothing doing there, as Zlatko Bralic will lead onto the dive into the boot. Ooh! Teo had a look down the inside there as well, but had to get on the brakes hard to avoid the crossing Zlatko Bralic. And that now will open up just a bit of a lead for Zlatko, but I think we're going to see that close right back up as Zlatko goes slightly wide through the toe of the boot. And there we see Teo Bubacek catch the dirt and go around. So that's second place that's gone around, and he is still stopped on the circuit. Can't tell if he hit anything.
It didn't look like he hit anything to me, but he did get that driver's side rear tire off in the dirt and grass, and around he went quickly. And
he has now retired that car, so clearly something has gone wrong there. As Zlatko Bralic now breathes a huge sigh of relief. He now has not a 2-car length lead, he now has a 2-second lead. Quite an upgrade for Zlatko, as Marco Buhin will now try to give chase in the number 30, also Lotus liveried Chevy Corvette.
Yeah, definitely. Looks like he just got a little bit too much there. So, yeah, huge relief for Bralic, because he's now going to have a nice gap to just focus on establishing himself in this race and not worrying too much about putting the car on the wall, as is higher probability, obviously, with somebody nipping at your heels.
Yeah, we've already had an early pit caller in Dmitry Sivkov, who's been on and off pit road to repair damage in his 75 prototype. As we also saw the 69 of Bryce Weir spinning at the pit entry on lap 4. Trying to work out now where Dimitri picked up that damage. Oh, and it was a proper configuration at the exit of the carousel on lap 4. Which saw Nathan Robinson spinning around at the exit, blocked the circuit. 1 car blocking the circuit. Dmitry Sivkov goes to driver's left to avoid, crests the end of the banking there, and the car just launched into the tires. So an unfortunate early race incident for Dmitry Sivkov. Nothing of his own doing, just trying to avoid this rotating car of Nathan Bryson. And he didn't have a good end to the Escorts Le Mans series. Had connection issues at the Petit Le Mans, but otherwise gave a good account of himself, so that's not how he wanted to recover. At the front of the field, it's still the 22 of Gary Feekins, now with 4.5 seconds over the 71 of Ivan Gomez. Hampus Anderson is closed right up, though, on the back of Gomez. That's the 99 is now just 0.3 of a second, and really even close to that. Looks like about 5 or 6 car lengths behind the 71 of Ivan Gomez. Lasse Brun-Hansen is further second back. Seems to be content to hold position there, as we see both Ivan and Hampus going through some of the 4GT back runners. As we see Hampus making a move down the inside, too wide into turn 1, and it looks like he will be able to make that. No, he does not make it stick. But Ivan runs wide at the exit. Well, Hampus takes the position as we see a 4GT spinning in the background, and that was the number 1 of Kenny Duval, spins out of 4th place in 4GT. As we now see Ivan Gomez trying around the outside with the slipstream, trying to make it work into the carousel. Not quite going to happen. Drew even as they come up 3 wide past the 4GT at exit. What a shock for David Jordan in the 4GT.
Yeah, this is a good battle here on track, using every inch of this racetrack and trying to get around that car there. 3 wide.
That car there is the GT2 leader of Bjorn Spindle, number 89.
Yes. Yeah, good stuff. Good clean stuff, honestly. It's real easy when you get slower GT cars like that, you know, in the middle of a big battle like this, to sometimes make a mistake, but everybody's held their ground. You know, Bjorn's obviously a real pro and knows what it's like to race in these prototypes, so he's done his best to stay out of the way and let this battle continue.
Yeah, absolutely. But all of that jockey back and forth is going to cost them a huge amount of time, as the gap to the lead is now from 4.8 seconds now to 6.4 seconds, as the 73 of Martin Blais was rotating on track. But it looks like he has just really... did he overshoot or did he get help? He got quite a bit of help from... That was the 48 of Soren Morgensen, at the heel of the boot. Just misjudged his brake point and got into the back of the 73 of Martin Blais. Martin, just unable to do anything with the car, is ejected from the track, really, into the kitty litter. Moving to the GT1 lead, Marco Buhin has taken up that challenge to chase down Zlatko Bralic and has now closed that gap down to 1 second from 2 seconds, so half the gap it was, as he's continuing to hunt down the leader. So it's still 23 from 30, Zlatko Bralic for Marco Buhin, but very much closer now. Whether it was a bad lap or a bad traffic lap for Zlatko, or if Marco's just a quicker car, not quite sure yet. Bjorn Spindel continues to lead in GT2, now by well over 2 seconds over David Jordan, so that's 89 from 85.
I guess the next time we broadcast Bjorn, we're going to have to put him in a Corvette, that way he can complete the trifecta there.
Yep, absolutely. As we see 4th, 5th, and 6th working through traffic, that's the 28 of Lasse Brun-Hansen, the 19 of Ronnie Fantini, and the 70 of Jason Elrod. 3 wide there for a moment on the front stretch, but no incident, and they continue. And Lasse really got the best of that, as both Fantini and Elrod were stuck behind traffic, really. As we now see the 70 of Jason Elrod taking a peek up the inside, but nothing doing there. But Fantini comes up on the Corvette at the exit of the carousel. Elrod content to sit behind, though, not forcing the issue. And we've had another retirement. That would be the 9 of Rob Kuss in the HPD ARX 01C. Not sure what happened to him yet, but we will find out for you. Looks like Rob Cuss ran well wide at the toe of the boot, got into the outside fence, then cut back across the track and hit the fence on driver's right, narrowly avoiding collecting the Ford GT of Dean Allen. Excuse me, no, Silas Grainer in the number 32. So Grainer counting his lucky stars.
Oh, for sure. Still, with so much time left, it would be a real bummer to be taken out in a situation like that so early.
Yeah, it looked like Rob just completely misjudged the corner, just carrying at about 50 miles an hour more than he'd ever be able to carry through there. As the lead in Prototype 2 is now even 6 seconds. 22, Gary Feekins from 99, Hampus Anderson. So that's Advan from BMW. Ivan Gomez is in third, a second further back of Hampus. Lasse Brune Hansen fourth, 2.5 seconds further back, and Fontini fifth, a little bit further back from Lasse, so that battle has calmed down. Zlatko Bralic and Marco Buhin have been maintaining about a second of gap in the Corvettes. So 23 from 30. And Bjorn Spindle still putting on a clinic in Ford GT, which we've come to expect from him, really.
Yeah, it seems as though, at least, except for Ellen, well, yeah, looks like the real only chance that we're going to see anything is in the Corvettes in the near future, anyways, as a lot of these guys have opened up a pretty decent gap. Gary Feekins there just walking away from the rest of the field, and Bjorn Spindle, like you said, yeah, we don't really expect anything short from Bjorn other than perfection.
I think about the only thing that could make this race, the race in the Fords, interesting would be Nick Verstappen.
Yeah, no, that
similarly,
would be fun.
The P2 race would be interesting if we could get Bjorn Spindle out of that car and into a prototype.
Yeah, that'd be really fun to watch, actually. They did such great battle.
Rob Cuss has brought that Lotus E20 liveried Honda back onto the circuit, but damaged and well down the order. He is, in fact, 12th of 12 prototypes, so last of the running prototypes, or of the unrunning prototypes, I suppose. Marco Buhin has had a unfortunate past lap. He lost 4 seconds to Zlatko Bralic. That gap is now looking closer to 6 or 7 seconds. Almost about half of the backstretch at this point. So the GT1 lead has now become much more secure than it previously was. And as you see, the 22 Gary Feekins now overtaking Ford GT traffic, rejoining the NASCAR circuit. No dramas there.
Yeah, this is probably one of my favorite parts of the track because you go real high speed through here and then try to get the best run you can onto the front straightaway to hit that start-finish line. So it's all about using your pace in yourself and really just hitting your marks and keeping that kind of rhythm going, especially at a track like this where it's so quick.
Yeah, absolutely. While we have just a moment of relatively calm action, I want to remind you of the VRC Mark II Virtual Racing Seat, a simulation racing cockpit designed by championship race car driver Bob Earl. Features a fully adjustable racing seat and frame, additional monitor stands and shifter mounts sold separately, $349 plus shipping at bobearlracing.com. the battle for second in Prototype 2 is tightening up just a bit. Just a second now between Hampus Andersson and Ivan Gomez, and that gap has been trending downwards over each of the last 3 or 4 laps. So Gomez very much closing up on Andersson, and that should be a good battle here in just a lap or two, depending on traffic. And if you have to go away from us for any reason, but you still have your mobile phone with you, or you just don't want to watch the video, the race is being simulcast on ETV Live Radio. Just click the right-hand side of the page, and you'll get right there.
Yeah, another great way to keep up on all the programming, all the racing that's happening on ETV Live. A lot of great championships that are being broadcast out there, and a lot of awesome championships still to come, about to start. So make sure you head over to ETV Live and check out all of those races, whether they be circular or road course.
Absolutely. Well, that gap that had been trending down, well, now it's extended to a second and a half, so Hampus Andersson has taken the better of that lap. And they've probably pulled away from Lasseter and Hansen at this point. Your 4th place runner in Prototype 2 now 6 seconds behind the battle for second and 14 seconds behind the overall lead. But now that battle has drawn right back up. Looks like Hampus has been disadvantaged in traffic. So now we measure that battle at maybe about 10 car lengths or so, not at a second and a half, as both Hampus and Ivan rejoin the NASCAR circuit.
It's one of the really weird things about this kind of multi-class racing with all these cars. It's just about as much, you obviously got to be skilled behind the wheel, but it's a lot about luck as well, because depending on when you actually run into traffic, can either shatter a lap or make a lap for a driver, and that's kind of what we see, especially with these 4 GTs. You get caught behind, and it's just, that your lap is done, and you got to wait till next lap to make it up.
Absolutely. Within that luck, that you can manufacture your own luck by manipulating where you'll catch that car in front of you. Whether you catch it mid-corner and you give up all of your speed, or if you lay off a bit and catch it at corner exit, you can maintain most of your run. As we now see, that gap has widened back up to about a second, so a little bit of excitement there for a moment through the boot, but now that gap has come back up. In GT2, Bjorn Spindle still leads right in front of these 2 drivers, and still has about 2 seconds back to the second place Ford GT of David Jordan. Zlatko Bralic still has commanding lead in the GM Chevy Corvette in GT1 after the mistake from Marco Boone. Buhin has actually had a couple of checkered laps here. His last lap was a 1 minute 53 second lap. So more drama must be following the 30 GM Chevy Corvette, the Lotus liveried car. But while we wait for that second place battle to heat up, which we anticipate it will do shortly, let's take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Hey, JD here with ETV Live, and let me tell you something. If it's too big for the pickup truck and you need to move it, there's only one trucking company you need to call, and don't bother with the Yellow Pages, cowboy. I'll give you that number in a minute. Manufactured goods, automotive, technical equipment, furniture, even if you need a reefer, Gary Mercer Trucking Incorporated is the only choice, cowboy. With locations in Mississauga, Ontario, Canada, Rancho Cucamonga, California, if you need to move it, store it, and keep it cold, you need to call Gary Mercer Trucking Incorporated. Long haul, short haul, or just across town, Gary Mercer has the best trained and qualified drivers to get your load from point A to point B with professionalism and on time. So remember, Hoss, if it don't fit in a pickup truck, you're going to need a real truck, cowboy. Sponsors of ETV Live's Friday Night Showdown, Gary Mercer Trucking Incorporated, 1-800-668-2980.
And welcome back to Watkins Glen, New York for the 2 hours of Watkins Glen, the race department iRacing.com Le Mans Series. Gary Feekins still leads by 7 seconds overall. Second place is the 99 of Hampus Anderson, 7 seconds back, as I think I just said. Third is the 71 of Ivan Gomez, about 0.6 of a second further adrift of Anderson. Fourth is Lasse Brun Hansen. In the GM Chevy Corvettes, Zlatko Bralic still leads. Marco Buhin is second after a checkered few laps. Third in class is Hannes Thaler. Fourth is Eric Hafner. And fifth is Martin Silva. Bjorn Spindle leads in the Fords over David Jordan by about 3 or 4 seconds. Dean Allen is third in the number 3 Ford GT. Love how that works out. Fourth in class is Kenny Duval in the number 1 Ford GT. He's wishing it worked like that. And fifth in class is Silas Grainer, having avoided the earlier rotating Rob Kuss. Like what you're hearing, but want to get more? As we see, Kenny Duval actually just rejoining the NASCAR circuit, looped the car off to driver's left, noses in heavily into the inside wall. So that's car number 1, looking very deranged at the front end, to put it mildly. So that's going to be an immediate pit call for him, and I don't know that that car will continue for much longer in this race, as he's actually staying out on the circuit. Very interesting decision by Kenny. That car very heavily damaged at the front, but clearly the suspension not affected.
Yeah, it's, again, I mean, it's the same thing that we just talked about before the commercial break. It's really tough. You got to maintain 100% concentration, wrong C word. 100% concentration on this lap and make sure that you hit every mark. And, if you don't, it's really easy at this track, especially around that transition, to put it in the wall if you're not careful.
It is. You have to be so delicate on the throttle coming through that transition, because you have a little bit of camber to help you out, and then it flattens out into the straightaway for the NASCAR circuit, and it just upsets the car so much. And we saw Kenny run very wide at turn 1 right afterwards, but it looks like he's continued on the rest of this lap in a fairly collected manner. As I say that, did a half spin diving into the boot, overcorrected the car, turned directly right, impacted the tires at driver's right, and now that car is now crabbing very heavily as he pulls across the track right in front of the prototype second and third place battle.
Yeah, it looks as though he just maybe realized.
And now at the toe of the boot, that car is done.
Yeah, maybe after the initial incident, didn't know quite to the extent of what was damaged, but unfortunately, instead of taking it easy, it's went right back into a critical state there.
And he's still trying to drive that car around instead of pulling it off the side of the track and towing that car, as he's going to almost runs wide at the heel of the boot into the 19 of Ronnie Fantini. Following this car now through through one lap ago where he had so many problems, runs very wide off to driver's right, but stays on track as that car is still sidetracking quite badly. Just about crosses up the 15 of Eric Hafner. Now through turn 10. This time through turn 11, he has to pull off into the pit lane. There's no question about it. That car has to have a meat ball at this point. Yes, he's on the approach to the pit lane as we see the 24 of Martin Silva come by. Into the pit lane goes Kenny Duval, number 1 in the Ford GT, and you have to think that car's going to be done at this point.
Yeah, and I'm a little surprised that he decided to run that extra time that he did. Granted, okay, he didn't know maybe the extent of the damage after the first impact, but once you went kind of sideways there at the second time, you really should have just pulled off to the side and retired the car, because at that point you're just becoming a hazard. And I mean, you never know who's going to come up behind you, whether it be the overall leader. I mean, I'm sure that Feekins would be just overjoyed to run into the back of that car because he decided not to pull it off with his near 7.5 second lead.
Yeah, that was a very dangerous move. Very dangerous move indeed from Kenny Duval. But as you said, Gary Feekins in Prototype 2, the fastest of our 3 classes running today, has a 7.5 second lead over Hampus Anderson still. The gap between Anderson and Gomez now up to 2 seconds, so what we thought was going to be a very good battle has now withered somewhat. We see Charles Huffstetler in the number 8 Ford GT catches the fence in a very big way in the S's. Through the left-handed S off to driver's right, letting the leader go by, grabs the fence, and that car just picked up and thrown about like a child's toy. The engine smoking heavily, and that will be the end of the race for Charles Huffstetler. Trying to do the right thing, but did the right thing wrong, I suppose. No, he wasn't trying to get out of the way. He was hit. He was actually hit by your overall leader, Gary Feekins. Feekins going for a gap that wasn't there. And just started the car of Huffstetler rotating. And nothing Huffstetler could do at that point. As we see the car heavily impacting the barriers and the engine letting go in that car.
Yeah, that was typical, a little over-ambitious move into the through that section by the LMP of Gary Feekins. Of course, I think Gary apologized over the radio. Charles not so happy about it, but yeah, that was really a move that he should have just waited for. It's not like Gary's under any kind of pressure whatsoever, so I mean, he could have waited to make the move, vice ruining the race for the GT car.
Yeah, that was a pretty brain-dead move by Gary Feekins. Dmitry Sivkov in the 75 may have caught a bit of that as well, as we saw that Ford GT rotate violently after it had settled on the ground, and the 75 of Sivkov running by. Doesn't look to be any damage on the 75 of Sivkov, thankfully for him, but just adding to the headache of Charles Huffstetler. Yeah, Gary Feekins right now should be very glad this is not the American Le Mans Series or another ACO regulated series, because that would be a mandatory stop and hold penalty for avoidable contact.
Oh yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, everybody needs to respect everybody out there, and that goes as far for the prototypes as it does the GT cars. I mean, he was under no duress from any other car, had an 8-second lead on second place. There's no reason for him to chop or to throw the car into the corner like that, trying to get around some space that's not there. You just gotta be a little bit more patient. That's what it is endurance racing. So you have to be, you have to just pay attention and not do stuff like that. And unfortunately, you're right. If it would have been an actual sanctioned, series by ACO, that would be a heavy penalty for sure.
Now that said, we don't know the rulebook for race department. That may well come with post-race penalties if we don't have a live admin. So Feekins not quite in the clear yet, but it looks like, at least for the duration of the event, will be in clear ground, but he does have damage to that right front fender that will slow down his straightaway speed. And we have seen Hampus Anderson closing back on him each of the last 2 laps. So maybe a little bit of laser-guided karma here for the 22 of Gary Feekins.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that damage plays over time. But yeah, I mean, he's still pretty clear in the class of the field at the moment.
And the other 2 classes, leads are still secure. Zlatko Bralic leads by quite a large margin over Marco Buhin, and Bjorn Spindle still leads by less of a margin, but still a safe margin over the 85 of David Jordan. The most interesting thing on track right now will be to see just how that gap is affected between Gary Feekins and Hampus Anderson.
Yeah,
Will
Hampus
that contact be enough to remove Gary Stranglehold from this race, or will he continue on unaffected?
Yeah, he's cut it down to under 6 seconds, so it'll be interesting to see exactly. It's back up to 6.3, so it looks like he's still getting along nicely.
Yep, so drama-free then for the 22 of Gary Feekins. The car might be slightly slower, but not slow enough for the rest of the field to draw back up. And we have lost the 20 of Nathan Robinson to some unknown malady. Robinson was running 10th in class. Looks like Nathan faked himself out behind a Corvette, exiting the toe of the boot. The end of the car stepped out. Nathan overcorrected and impacted the barrier on driver's left very heavily indeed, as you'll see here in just a moment on the ETV ePlay. So a very heavy impact indeed for Nathan Robinson, and that car has been retired. Gap for the lead maintaining steady at about 6.2 seconds, lap over lap, but the gap between second and third closing up just a bit, now just 1.2 seconds between the 99 of Anderson and the 71 of Gomez. We've been seeing that gap bounce around 1 to 2 seconds all race long though, so I'm not going to get too excited yet that we might have a battle on our hands.
Yeah, they've been trading time between each other quite a bit there. Lucky for Hampus though, I mean, the gap hasn't really grown from him to Gary, so I guess that's a small moral victory.
Yeah, absolutely. It means it just takes one more mistake from Gary Feekins, and we'll have a three-way race for the lead on our hands. Kenny Duval, in number 1 for GT, has rejoined the race. You'll recall his multiple heavy contacts with the fence over that long recovery lap.
Actually, we just got Feekins now in the pits.
That's scheduled, though. This is just 4 minutes into the race, so that's scheduled pit stops for Feekins.
But for him, you would have thought that maybe he wanted to try to stay out a little bit longer, vice having to make the first stop.
Hard to say. We saw Bjorn Spindle in the Corvette in the Escorts Le Mans Series make that early first stop work very well indeed. But when you have that much of a lead, there's no point to trying anything Mickey Mouse. Just get the car in and get it back out. as we see the crew have repaired that crash damage that he had from the collision with Charles Hofstetler. So once again, a pristine car for the 22 and erstwhile P2 leader of Gary Feekins. Other racing happening around the world. We have the 24 Hours of Spa at the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps in Belgium, but the Blancpain Endurance Series. After 5 hours of racing there, the Mark VDS BMW Z4 number 3 leads the Pro class. Pro-Am is led by the AF Corsa Ferrari number 52. The Gentleman Trophy is led by First Motorsport Porsche number 25. And the Cup class is led by the Pro GT by Almeris Porsche number 32. And as we say that, the gap now between Anderson and Gomez now right back down to the battle zone, as we shall call it now. Just half a second between those two cars. And Hamp is very, very wide indeed at the exit of the toe of the boot, will allow the 71 of Ivan Gomez to draw right up on the back of him. As we now see both of those cars going through the heel of the boot and now rejoining the NASCAR circuit. Every time I try to talk this battle up, they just sort of seem to slide away slightly. And will either car head into the pit lane this time, but through? Yes, Hampus Anderson into the pit lane, which means Ivan Gomez will take the lead of this race. So 99 into the pits, 71 to the lead. Your class leaders in both GT1 and GT2 have yet to make their first pit stop. We're not ignoring them, but we do have the closest battle going on in P2 at the moment. We'll continue to bring pit stops to you on the side-by-side video, but we're going to take just a quick commercial break here. We'll be right back.
Hey dude, are you ready to rock and roll? If that's cool, then you need to do it over at HD Radio Network. HD Radio Network, 4 stations broadcasting 24/7 with everything from metal favorites to the 80s classic rock like legendary Leonard Skinner, Electric Light Orchestra, Foreigner, and bone-rattling, skull-crushing rock and roll on hard driving radio. And partnered with Nuff World Simulation Gaming, check out the HD Radio Network's Nuff Radio with Bear Factory, Stone Temple Pilots, Def Leppard, and a whole lot more. HDRadionetwork.com. Take your pick and rock your brains out, dude.
And welcome back to the Race Department, iRacing.com Le Mans Series at Watkins Glen for the 2 hours of Watkins Glen. I'm Sean Pivick, alongside me is Sean Petchin, and we're about 1 minute. We've got about 1 hour and 13 minutes remaining in this 2-hour race. We've just seen the start of green flag pit stops, the first of our 2 scheduled pit stops, as we saw the 48 of Soren Mogensen on the backstretch take a bit of a creative line, potentially setting his pit settings. Just wandered off the track to driver's left, scraped the wall, got his attention, he pulled back onto the circuit and continued with no further dramas. So to set the running order for you, it's the 71 of Ivan Gomez at the front of the field. He still owes us 2 pit stops. Lasse Brun Hansen, 28, is second. Gary Feekins, your former leader, is third, but he has already made his first of 2 scheduled stops. In GT1, Zlatko Bralic still leads from Marco Buhin, and that is a very large gap indeed. Hannes Thaler is third in the 11, well back. Martin Silva and Eric Hafner round out your top 5 in GT1. Bjorn Spindle leads comfortably in GT2 as he comes onto the pit lane in the 89 Ford GT. Dean Allen is second in Ford GT. Silas Grainer is third. Kenny Duval fourth. And David Jordan is fifth, having already made his first of 2 scheduled stops. As we see the 28 Highcroft Racing HPD ARX 01C of Lasse Brun Hansen onto the pit lane right behind the number 3 of Dean Allen, who was second in class, so he'll give up that position.
Yeah, Dean in a little unfamiliar territory this year, for this race anyways. Usually used to seeing him running those Corvettes, making those awesome fuel strategy runs, but this weekend he's taken a step back to the Ford GT, so...
That's not a step back, it's just a step sideways. As we also
there
see
you
the
go.
11 of Hannes Thaler on the pit lane as the 89 of Bjorn Spindel exits the pit lane. David Jordan seems to have had slightly more dramas than just the scheduled pit stop, though, as he is 1 lap down to the class leader. Pit stop here doesn't take that long, especially from the second in class that he was at. So it looks like he's had some sort of mechanical difficulty as well that was that needed to be repaired. Not a terminal difficulty in mind, but enough to set him back. And onto the pit lane comes your overall leader, number 71, Ivan Gomez. So we expect that will put Gary Feekins back into the overall race lead. Now the real question will be, will Hampus Andersson come out in front or behind of Ivan Gomez? Remember, they were just 1 second apart before the cycle of pit stops began. Ivan Gomez, with this later stop, you figure he might have gotten a little bit of extra speed out of that car.
Yeah, if you can't get it done on the track, the best time to do it is when that other car ducks in the pit, so it'll be interesting to see if he was able to do that. See if
Ivan
maybe...
is still in the pit lane, and Hampus Andersson has already exited turn 1, so not only has Hampus Andersson retained second place in P2, he has extended that gap considerably as Ivan Gomez just now exiting the pits, so that he may even forfeit. No, he'll remain in third in P2.
Interesting. I don't know if there's any kind of issues with the pit stop, or if he had changes or damage or something, but that just seemed a little bit long. There
must have been some damage that needed to be repaired on that car, clearly. As we've had the 75 of Dmitry Sivkov retire. He had 2 incidents earlier in the race, so expecting crash damage perhaps for him. Pulled into his pit box and just retired the car, so perhaps that car was meatballed.
Yeah, our overall leader here, Feekins, he's run into some... oh, wow, a spin right in front of him.
That was the 48 of Soren Morgensen, and look who's just behind Feekins now. That is the 99 of Hampus Andersson, so we may now have an actual battle for the lead on our hands in just a few laps.
Yeah, somebody's going to need to bring Gary a new driving suit, because that that number 48 car spun out right in front of him, giving him basically no time to react, but it looks like he's gotten away.
Now, was that a spin, or did he get assistance there? That was a spin.
Yeah, it looked like to me anyways.
Just got tires out onto the dirt, and around she went.
Yeah, that's what it looked like when I had originally seen it, was that Feekins was coming up behind him, and then the 48 just lost it, and right in front of him, too. I mean, good heads-up driving there by Feekins. But yeah, now he's got a real problem on his hands as the number 99, Hampus Andersson, 1.7 seconds. He's going to try to make that, try to see if he can go pace-to-pace with him there.
Yeah, this is easily the closest anybody's been to Feekins all day. Remember, Feekins jumped out to that 3-second lead at the start, so when I say that, actually means since it's dropping the green flag. And clearly some dramas for the 71 of Ivan Gomez, now 13 seconds adrift of the lead, where he was just about 8 seconds adrift of the lead before the round of pit stops. And we see our GT1 leader, Zlatko Burilik, in the number 23 GM Chevy Corvette, onto the pit lane finally. Not quite long enough to try to do a one-stop race, if that was what he was thinking, but he's not stretched far enough. He'll still need to make one more stop to get to the end of this race. Marco Buhin has already been in and out of the pit lane, second in GT1, as has Hannes Thaler in third. Hoffner and Silva have also paid us their pit stops. And Feekins now pulling back out away from Hampus Andersson. That gap now up to 2.1 seconds from 1.7. So easy sailing for Gary Feekins at this point. Trying to find you a battle to bring to you on track, but it looks like all the classes are fairly well spread out at this point, with the closest battle being that battle for the overall race lead at 2 seconds. If you're looking to get started hosting your own races in not iRacing, but it's in rFactor 2, Arca Sim Racing, or rFactor, give MTCO.com a shot. Your best solution to world-class competition starts with their gaming servers. Go to MTCO.com for more information. And if you like what you're hearing, or want to watch this again later, don't forget the ETV After Show, the 24-hour network featuring reruns of our best racing events. Over 600 broadcasts. We are the self-proclaimed leader in said broadcasting at etv-eplay.net. And the gap in P2 has stretched by another 0.4 of a second, now 2.5 seconds from 1.7 seconds just 2 laps ago, so Feekins continues to pull away from the field.
Yeah, I was just about to say, it looks like everything's gone back to being a status quo here as Feekins extends his lead to 2.5 seconds over Hampus Andersson. Ivan Gomez and Lars Brunhansen have fallen back considerably as well. So pretty business as usual, at least, or so it's been for the entire race for Mr. Feekins.
Indeed. Andersson will be hoping for, as Neil Patrick Harris eloquently put it, the status to not be quo, but certainly not getting his way at the moment.
And I think really this race is going to come down to being won or lost as traffic. And I'm not saying lap traffic holding up and potentially allowing Hampus an opportunity to get around, but the traffic has proven to be a little you know, the skill level of the drivers has varied greatly, anyways, in this race. And it will be interesting to see, you know, once Watkins gets around lap traffic and everything, you know, there is no guarantees that he's going to survive an encounter every time he comes up on lap traffic. So that's certainly going to be something that you're going to want to keep your eyes on, because again, we do have kind of a wide array of talent in the race at the moment.
Yeah, and we have seen him over-eager in traffic once already, damage the right front of that car. Now, it was repaired, but history tends to be a predictor of the future. So we could certainly see 22 of Gary Watkins involved in another incident lapped with traffic from lower classes or lapped HPD traffic.
Oh, especially with Hampus right there. I mean, now, you know, with 2.3 seconds, you're typically not going to try to make a bonsai move like if he was, you know, 1 second. Now, had it been that 1.3 seconds that we've seen after the pit stops, you know, very easily could have seen Gary try to throw a move like he did on the GT car to try and create some kind of separation between himself and Hampus. But, you know, he has been a little overexcited today on this track, so...
Yeah, absolutely. Well, speaking of bad trap laps, it seems Watkins has had one, as Hampus is now within 1.3 seconds of the overall lead. But we would still expect that, well, if Watkins has a bad lap with traffic, Hampus is going to have to go through that same traffic and will probably lose the same amount of time. So we would expect this to go back to around 2.5 seconds this time by.
So what do you think about this track, Pivik? I know you've had a chance to drive out here before in probably these cars, as it's pretty much the only car I think I've ever seen you drive on iRacing. But what do you think about this track and this layout in these endurance cars?
This is actually where I got my first win in the Chevrolet Corvette C6R way back when it was a single class series. So the camber on the track easily throws you off. If you're used to, in road racing, rather flat corners, there's a little bit of camber to help you, but not nearly the amount you have here. So it's a unique challenge setup-wise to get the car working in the banking. Because if you, not only do you need to get the cambers and the suspension set up right, but it's also a different sort of technique to attack that banking than you would a flat corner. You take very much an earlier turn in to get the car to take a set in the banking, borrowing some oval turns, I suppose. But you really wait for that car to grip up in the banking, and then you just blast through the corner. But if you get the entry just a little bit wrong, you end up in a hopeless understeer off the side of the circuit. And at that point, you just hope you don't hit anything, because the difference really is that much. If you miss the turn-in by a couple of meters with as committed as you have to be to get the most out of the banking, it all goes completely wrong. We aren't running the bus stop or the interloop today, which is an interesting choice. You can make a case for it either way. It certainly would have been, it would have added another overtaking spot, certainly, but at the same time, we would have had the potential for quite a few more cross-class incidents. So with that balance in mind, I think I'm okay with not running the inner loop. As we have the cross flags, half of this race down to go, half of this race down, half of this race to go, 1 hour. Yeah, the boot is a unique challenge, though, because to enter the loop, it's really a very steeply downhill corner. I'm trying and failing to think of another corner in iRacing that is so downhill for so long. Certainly the corkscrew is the steepest corner we have, but it's a very quick corner. You're in and out of it. Well, it's a very long downhill to dive into that inner loop. The toe of the boot, there's a concrete patch that's about a line off of the apex that I've always tried to put my left side tires on and keep the right side tires on the asphalt. But it's a challenge to really find speed through there because there's really about 3 or 4 different lines that you can use to make it work. And then the heel of the boot is just always going to be slower than you think it is. You always try to overdrive it, and then you get that, you apex it, and the car just keeps washing out. So a very understeery corner is that heel of the boot. Then, as we've seen earlier, rejoining the NASCAR circuit is a nasty transition. You crest a hill in the middle of the corner, and you have to be, eggshells under the throttle pedal or eggs under the throttle pedal is sort of the phrase that we always use, but you really can't emphasize enough. You have to keep the throttle gentle as you exit back onto the straightaway. And then turn 10 and 11, coming back to the start-finish line, are very fun corners. The camber really helps you here, and you can really get a lot more speed than you'd expect through those.
Yeah, I've not driven a race in these cars, but I have had the chance to test. I was actually testing the C6R, your favorite, around this track just the other night, and it did actually have the inner loop in there, or the bus stop for some of the NASCAR folk. But yeah, it was a real fantastic. It was really fun. You really had to be committed, and you really had to have good rhythm around this place at all times. And like you said, there's a lot of a commitment that goes into pushing through some of these corners. I know on the first section of the racetrack, I absolutely went through there like I do with anything else, and I pushed, I pushed too hard and I rubbed up against the Armco barriers there, going uphill down towards the straightaway. So it definitely does take a lot of commitment, but you can really get some good laps especially out of the Corvette at this track, and it is a blast.
The S's are so deceptive in any but the most downforcing of cars. You always expect to be able to just take those flat, and the stock cars, the big heavy lumbering things, you really have to get the setup exactly right to be able to take those flat. Even in the Corvette and the Ford GT, if your setup isn't in the ballpark, you have to lift and be very careful. As the gap in front of the field continues to be about 2 seconds, as we saw the orange Ford GT of, who was that? That was Silas Grainer, over rotating at the exit of turn 10. Saved the car, though. Very well done indeed, Silas. We'll give you a quick through the field here, as we have a moment. Gary Fegans in the number 22 HPD ARX-01C continues to lead the race. Hampus Anderson in the 99 BMW liveried Honda is second, 2 seconds back. Ivan Gomez hasn't recovered after that pit stop. He's still in third, 13 seconds adrift of the lead. Lasse Brun Hansen is fourth in the Highcroft Honda, 26 seconds adrift of the lead. The 19 of Ronnie Fantini is fifth. Jason Elrod is sixth, just 4 seconds between those two cars. Soren Mogensen has had a bit of an interesting race. He's in seventh in class. Martin Blaise is in eighth. Rob Kuss is in ninth. That car's still surviving after an incident at the toe of the boot. Zlatko Bralic is your GT1 leader in his GM Chevy Corvette in the number 23. Marco Buhin is second, about 4 or 5 seconds behind Zlatko. Hannes Thaler in the 11 is third. Eric Hafner in the Android liveried Corvette is fourth. And Martin Silva is fifth. In GT2, the 89 of Bjorn Spindler continues to lead decisively over Dean Allen. The 32 of Silas Grainer is in third, well adrift of Dean Allen even. Kenny Duval is in fourth with that damaged race car. David Jordan is fifth after his mechanical woes earlier in the race. And Andy Baker is your last running car in the 09. Have a load to move, but truck's too small? Grab a real truck. Gary Mercer Trucking is more than happy to help you. is sponsored the Friday Night Showdown series on ETV Live, featuring the nationwide cars. Gary Mercer Trucking Incorporated is CTPAT approved, and Fast Express drivers, Gary Mercer, give them a look at gmercer.com. And after that advert, we're going to jump to commercials improper. We'll be right back. Thanks for staying with us.
Hey, JD here with ETV Live, and let me tell you something. If it's too big for the pickup truck and you need to move it, there's only one trucking company you need to call, and don't bother with the Yellow Pages Cowboy. I'll give you that number in a minute. Manufactured goods, automotive, technical equipment, furniture, even if you need a reefer, Gary Mercer Trucking Incorporated is the only choice, Cowboy. With locations in Mississauga, Ontario, Canada, Rancho Cucamonga, California, if you need to move it, store it, and keep it cold, you need to call Gary Mercer Trucking Incorporated. Long haul, short haul, or just across town, Gary Mercer has the best trained and qualified drivers to get your load from point A to point B with professionalism and on time. So remember, Hoss, if it don't fit in a pickup truck, you're going to need a real truck, Cowboy. Sponsors of ETV Live's Friday Night Showdown, Gary Mercer Trucking Incorporated, 1-800-668-2980.
Welcome back to Watkins Glen, New York for the 2 hours of Watkins Glen, presented by the Race Department, iRacing.com Le Mans Series. As we went to commercial, you missed all sorts of excitement. One, we saw the pass for 5th on the picture-in-picture, but more importantly, we saw Gary Feekins, your overall leader, get in the dirt coming into the boot and spin the car into the driver's left-hand side Armco, and that allowed Hampus Anderson in the 99 to take the lead for the first time today.
Yeah, it was, Gary's been fast all day. I mean, we've said it all day, but, he's kind of a bit of a wild card, as he likes to push, and when you push, you run into issues like he did with that spin in the dirt there, allowing Hampus to get around him. Now, Gary has had the pace, but since he has been passed for the lead, he has kind of turned up the wick a bit there, and he's going to want to be careful. He's got the faster car, I believe. He's going to want to make sure that he doesn't do anything that's going to jeopardize his ability to win the race. So, he's going to have to just, swallow his pride there for a second, realize he made a mistake, and fight back. But don't do anything stupid, or you're just going to waste half the race.
Well, he may have more dramas than that, because I am very definitely seeing damage on that car now. You can see the left rear end plate on the rear wing is bent in, and generally that means the left rear suspension has seen some issues as well. So that car probably not 100% anymore. But as you said, we've been nervous about Gary all race long in traffic. He's looked very much like a hot lapper and hasn't shown any patience in traffic, as we see him get very close indeed to the tires at the exit of turn 11. But even with that lap, he's gained a half a second on Hampus Andersson that time by. Whether Hampus was delayed by traffic or if Watkins is still going to be a half a second a lap faster than Hampus, we don't know quite yet, but we'll find out in about another minute or so, I suspect.
Yeah, it's real tough. It's been, you know, it's the traffic and everything. I mean, you have to keep your mental edge here, even through traffic, even when you're by yourself. And it seems as though that Gary is just off that today. Granted, this is the first time I've watched him race, but yeah, it just seems as though he's a bit in qualifying mode, very kind of willpower-esque, if you will, where he doesn't really have much concern for anybody else that's on the track, as we see him come up on a lot of GT traffic now. It'll be interesting to see him get around this.
Yeah, as we also saw Hampus Andersson get very oversteery diving into the boot, but he recovered that car nicely.
And see a nice job there by Gary picking his way through those 4 GTs. Yeah, GT2 leader looked like he was in that pack. And, you know, so he's got through there okay. So he's just going to need to keep, you know, putting that level of effort in there as he looks to reel him in.
Gap on this lap down to 3 seconds. So
yeah, so he's about he's about half a second faster than Hampus is. So Hampus is going to need to. I mean, I think that he's starting to maybe he's starting to realize that he's not going to be faster than him in pace, but maybe by using some of these other cars as picks, or just, you know, having, I guess, or just forcing Gary to push is what Hampus needs to do. Just force him into that mistake, because he's shown already that he's capable of making it. Yeah, absolutely.
Now, I don't know that there's enough cars on the track for Hampus to really rely on them as picks. Usually if you have something like a 40-car field here, that'd be a very worthwhile strategy, but we only have, I believe, 20 cars on the racetrack.
Yeah, so he's going to really need like maybe a group of about 6 cars to keep, just to prolong it, just like another half a track basically, because at this point, I mean, there's still quite a bit of time in this race. He's going to have to deal with Gary beforehand, but if he can catch these little pockets of 6 cars, these 6 GT cars rolling around, you know, and just try to get around them and really put Gary to a disadvantage by hitting them at the wrong part of the racetrack, then that could buy him just a little bit more breathing space and maybe allow him to lead just a little bit longer. But you're right, it is pretty barren out there with only 25 cars, I think it was, taking the flag, and a lot of them, I think, 5 of them have retired.
Yep, 5 retirees thus far, and 0.2 of a second further gone on the lead that lap. Gary Watkins is now down to 2.8 seconds behind Hampus Andersson. As we watch this on screen, we don't want to forget about our other classes. Zlatko Bralic still leads in GT1 by a very healthy margin indeed over Marco Buhin. Hannes Thaler is still 3rd, right behind Marco actually, so we actually have a battle for position for 2nd in GT1 on the circuit, just 3 or 4 car lengths between them. Eric Hafner, quickly to go over the rest of the GT1 field, well back of that battle, and Martin Silva is your last running Corvette. But over the last 2 or 3 laps, Hannes Thaler has been about a half a second a lap faster than Marco Buhin. As now we focus on it, we see Buhin now slightly pulling back ahead of Thaler.
I wonder if it's that Lotus livery.
Get faster the further the race goes?
Yeah, do a little bit better the faster the race goes, but yeah, it's you know, it's got to be a lot of fun for these guys. I mean, there's not many Corvettes kind of in the mix at the moment, but you know, and there goes.
That's a very big incident indeed for Marco Buhin, channeling his inner Roman Grosjean there. Gives a very exiting turn 1. His car spears off to driver's left, impacts the Armco, and spears back across the track to driver's right. Narrowly missed collecting anybody else. Hannes Thaler very lucky indeed to avoid that. So, very big incident there for number 30, Marco Buhin, and that does indicate all of our Lotus liveried cars have now been retired from the race, sadly.
Order has been restored.
Yes, now we are showing the IndyCar Lotuses. Very hard impact for the 30 of Marco Buhin. Very hard impact indeed, and very lucky for Hannes Thaler and for the white prototype behind. I believe that was the overall leader. It was indeed. That was your overall leader, Hampus Andersson, just barely avoiding contact.
Yeah, again, we talked about it just a moment ago when we were talking about Gary, but yeah, Hampus is going to have to watch out for that traffic as well, because it seems that even people, you know, all these people in this race have such a different level of skills. Some have been doing this, you know, a really long time. Some of them, you know, maybe this is their third or fourth time, you know, in one of these Le Mans cars. So, you know, you got to be real careful out there. You cannot assume that the person in front of you knows precisely what they're doing.
Certainly, the course of the Corvette we observed in the S-Course Le Mans series seems to be carrying over as well. Yeah, so that's now a third of your Corvettes that have retired from the race. Your lead at the front of the field has stabilized just at 2.6 seconds. Now Hampus Andersson has over Gary Feekins. As we see, Zlatko Bralic turn into Gary Feekins, so damage for your GT1 leader and potential damage for your second in P2. That's another brain-dead move from Gary Feekins. Certainly has probably turned one driver off of this series already in Charles Hufstetler. And Feekins may be doing his best just to scare the rest of the GT traffic off of the circuit as he comes up on a Corvette and a Ford GT. What will he do here? 3 wide. Not the best move, Gary Feekins, but he makes it work so far. But we're not at the end of the straightaway yet as the Corvette wisely lets Feekins go. Gary Feekins now doing his best impression of a wrecking ball on the Watkins Glen International Raceway.
Yeah, not very smart moves here. This is classic what happens when you get into these endurance races, and the prototypes just seem to think that they can do, you know, just whatever they want, and it's really frustrating for the GT cars, as Zlatko gave him a WTF in the chat bar. Kind of saying, what the hell are you doing? This is, an endurance race. You can't be throwing your car around there like that. And, again, it's all about respect. There is endurance class racing etiquette, and it's not being, at least one car anyways in particular, is not adhering to any of it, it seems.
No, the 22 is treating them as lap cars and not as cars entitled to their own circuit in their own race. Now, all that said, all that activity over the last 2 laps, Gary Feekins has been about 0.7 of a second quicker. So even with the contact, he's getting through traffic quicker, but at what cost? That car may not see the finish if he continues like that.
Yeah, it wouldn't shock me, honestly. It really wouldn't. But it's just, It's just the way it is. I mean, that's the prototypes. You know, oftentimes feel as though they're entitled. And I mean, I've drove prototypes. I've drove the ARX quite a bit, and you know, I won't lie. I've done my fair share of dive bombing. Everybody does it, but at the same point in time, you know, he's done it multiple times now. And you know, he's obviously the fastest car on the circuit. So I mean, he doesn't really need to catch Hampus at any like lightning pace. He just needs to drive a smart race and let Hampus come back to him, and then he can do the move at a time when it's going to be appropriate. All he's doing is making everybody upset who's in a Corvette.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, having driven my fair share of GT class cars, you remember the front end of the cars, the front end of the prototypes as they come through the field. You remember who's been kind to you on the track and let you run your race, and you remember who's been difficult, or who was very aggressive. And towards the end of the race, at this point, you're now fully angry at the drivers who have been very aggressive, and you maybe don't quite get out of the way as quickly as you would for someone that's been kind to you. As we see Watkins into the pit lane for his second and final scheduled pit stop of the race. Yeah, you absolutely remember who has crossed you on the track, and you go out of your way to make it easy on the guys that have been kind to you, and you go out of your way to make it hard on the guys that haven't been.
Oh yeah, if I'm driving a Corvette and I've got a prototype that's come up, you know, is coming up and being and has already proven to me once that he doesn't, you know, show me any respect, please believe that I'm not going to be moving. In fact, I'm not going to move out of the way at all. I'm going to drive into the corner as hard as I can and make life on him as difficult as possible. Vice somebody who, you know, drives by, kind of, you know, waits for his right moment to make that pick or to make that overtake. You know, I'm going to let him go, like you said. But if there's a guy who's made things difficult on me, I'm going to drive that car into the corner as hard as I can, and without regard really for the guy behind me.
Well, it's a trust issue, too, because if I see him and there's a questionable move on the cards, I'm actually going to take a defensive line into the corner. I'm going to move to the middle of the track and say, you are not overtaking me here. There is no space, sir.
Yeah, and
now sees the 22 of Watkins pull out of the pit lane. It seemed like a long stop, but we'll see how he fills out after Anderson has his pit stop.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you know, the prototypes have unbelievable grip. We know this. They can grip pretty much in any of the corners. They can outgrip, you know, almost any of the cars that are on this on the sim. But the thing is you can't do miracles in them if at certain points of certain racetracks. You just can't.
As we have Hampus Anderson on the pit lane. So that's your overall leader, 99 BMW Honda HPD ARX 01C. I'm sure I've confused you guys enough with that. And he overshoots his pit stall, actually. He has to reverse back into it. So that's going to help Gary Watkins out immensely. Now looking to see where Gary Watkins is, just coming back onto the NASCAR circuit. As Anderson still taking tires, now back on the ground, just fuel going into that car now. And Anderson back exiting the pit lane, as Watkins now just coming onto the front stretch. So Anderson once again will have taken a huge advantage over the course of the pit stops.
Well, that's the difference between fixing damage and not fixing damage in the pits.
Indeed, you're absolutely right there. That does promote Ivan Gomez to the overall race lead, but he still owes us his second and final stop. Remember, though, he went very long on that first stint. And that will promote Lassiter and Hansen to second, although he also owes us a pit stop. Zlatko Bralik is continuing on course. He was the other car involved in that incident with Gary Watkins. Doesn't seem to have been slowed down appreciably. Hannes Thaler still 10 or 15 seconds further adrift of the lead in GT1. Gordon Spindle still leads in GT2 by an obscene margin really at this point over Dean Allen. Has about a third of a lap on Dean Allen, does Bjorn Spindle in the 89 Ford GT. And the gap that we're interested in, as Hampus Anderson is now not anywhere near to the line, so we won't tell you that gap quite yet. But the gap we're interested in is, of course, the difference between Hampus Anderson and Gary Watkins. It was about 2 seconds thereabouts before the pit stops, as we see Watkins struggling again with lapped traffic, or excuse me, with the Ford GTs. Hampus Anderson now across the line takes a whiff of draft from Ronnie Fantini before he goes around the outside. 31 seconds off of the overall lead, but that will come back as Gomez and Brun Hansen make their pit stops. Gary Feekins is now 8 seconds behind Hampus Andersson, so plus 6 seconds on the pit stops was Feekins, as he runs very wide at turn 1, cuts through the dirt to get back to the circuit. We don't expect to see Gomez in for another 3 or 4 laps at least, such was his first stint. Brun Hansen we expect to see in fairly soon now. We all know sim racing in a rolling caster chair, office chair, can be quite a painful experience, an uncomfortable experience. So go check out the VRC Mark II Virtual Racing Seat. That's a simulation racing cockpit designed by championship race car driver Bob Earl. It features a fully adjustable racing seat and frame. Additional monitor stands and shifter mounts are also available, but sold separately. It's only $349 plus shipping, and you can go check it out at bobearlracing.com.
Need to get me a new rig for my sim racing.
I think Bob Earl has just a thing for you then.
I believe so. I think I'm gonna have to check it out.
The gap this lap between Hampus Andersson and Gary Feekins now 11 seconds, so Hampus actually making better time through traffic this lap than Feekins, so quite the reversal of fortunes that we saw from just 5 laps ago. GT1 leader Zatko Brilic into the pit lane. Will he take the time to repair the damage to that car, or will he pit out with the damage still in place? But either way, that promotes Hannes Thaler in the 11 Corvette to the GT1 lead. But we expect a pit stop from him in the next 2 or 3 laps.
So the cars look now, for the moment, they've spread out quite a bit. It doesn't look like we really have a whole lot going on.
No, we're still expecting stops from their top 2 runners.
Yeah, we are awaiting pit stops.
But no other battles on track at the moment.
But could I mention, I'll go ahead and mention this now, that actually well, I'll wait one more second just to be sure, because these have a weird way of making me into a liar, but it looks anyways at the moment that Hampus is actually pulling away from Gary Feekins.
That has been the trend over the past 2 laps, whether Feekins tried to get that car repaired and his crew just sort of threw a hammer at it and said, go drive that, or whether Hampus has just found some pace on that car, I don't quite know.
Yeah, he very well could have been maybe just saving up for the last part, you know, the mission keep Feekins rather in the picture, and then once that final, you know, get down to about the final half hour or so, you know, really start to make that push for overall victory, as he's you know, put about 2 seconds on Gary here since all these stops and everything.
I do believe several drivers after this race will be referring to Gary as Gary freaking Feekins after their various encounters with him on the Watkins Glen circuit.
Very true. Another thing
12
too.
seconds last time by, and we see Feekins just now pulling onto the start-finish straight, smoking the tires through the apex of the corner, so we're very much overdriving that car at this point, trying to get 12 tenths out of it, and it's still about 12 seconds, so Gary, you're not doing yourselves any favors by smoking the tires. Relax, and you've still got 30 minutes to go, bud.
Yeah, this is, you know, you gotta ask yourself how many times he's been you know how many endurance races he's been in a position to win, because you should know that the pace that he's had before was half a second faster than Anderson. So, you know, again, while you're pushing so hard, all you're going to do is wear out your tires, basically, before you get to the end of the race. And then, you know, say you do get within about 3 or 4 seconds, you're not going to be able to do anything about it because your tires will be gone. Oh, and we just had a huge impact between a GT and one of the prototypes there. I'm trying to find out exactly who that was.
Duval, and I believe that was Jason Elrod. So that was 70 Elrod in the prototype 2, and Kenny Duval in the number 1, who had many problems earlier.
Yeah, it looked like Duval got off into the grass, and then he came back onto the racetrack and just lost control, and he slammed into the side of Elrod.
This is absolutely second verse, same as the first. Kenny Duval got the car all sorts of wrong at the toe of the boot, spun and exit back to the car into the fence on driver's left. Severely damaged that car again, and again made the brain-dead choice, really, of driving that car back to the pits while the steering wheel is 45 degrees from center to go straight. Doing his best impression of a snake on the straightaway, got off into the grass coming out of the heel, spun the car again, corrected the car, and then collected the unfortunate Jason Elrod.
Again, I mean, that's a prime example right there of what we were talking about with the varying skill levels. That number 1 car honestly has no business even being on the track with some of these drivers. I mean, he's just taken out the fifth place car, and for what? I mean, he was driving around a broke down, you know, piece of junk Ford. And so, you know, honestly, that's just really, that's really brain dead, and it's really too bad, honestly.
Yeah, that is not the driving standard I expect to see in any private league. Certainly the race administrators and the league administrators will be having a very thorough talking to with all of their drivers after this event. Because we've seen some driving standards today that have just been not only subpar, but subpar for public pickup server racing in other sims. I apologize, we can't bring that replay to you. Technical difficulties at the moment. And Hampus Anderson has extended his virtual lead over Gary Feekins by another second, so now put 13 seconds between those two cars. As Yvonne Gomez continues to lead in P2 with 1 pit stop yet to make. Lasse Brun Hansen is second in P2 with, again, 1 pit stop left to make. Still 20 cars allegedly running, but we expect the number 1 and possibly the number 70 to be retired from the event. And in fact, the 70 has been retired. So we'll give you a quick rundown of the positions. We've covered first and second in P2. Third is Hampus Anderson in the 99. He's our virtual leader. He's made all of his pit stops to go the rest of the distance. Fourth is Gary freaking Feekins. Fifth is Ronnie Fantini. Sixth is now Martin Blaise. Seventh is Jason Elrod as he plummets through the field following that incident with the number 1 of Kenny Duval. And in fact, 7th is now Soren Mogensen. 8th, Jason Elrod. He will finish somewhere around 20th. 9th is Rob Kuss. Your GT1 leader is Latko Bralick. Second in GT1 is Hannes Thaler with about half of the front stretch as the lead. Martin Silva is 3rd. Marco Buhin still runs in 4th, and Eric Hafner is 5th in the Android Corvette. Bjorn Spindle is your GT2 leader and has about a half a lap lead over Dean Allen in number 3 Ford GT in 2nd. David Jordan is 3rd following his mechanical difficulties earlier in the race. Silas Grainer has seen his fair share of excitement, although causing none of it, in 4th. Kenny Duval is in 5th, but we expect that car to be retired. Andy Baker in the 09 is in 6th in GT2, 8 laps behind Kenny Duval. So after looking like a Gary Feekins sort of race for the first hour and 20 minutes, this is now looking very much like Hampus Anderson's Toulouse.
Yeah, certainly. It seems as though the tides have changed, and Karma has decided that he is not that Mr. Feekins is not going to win after collecting as many cars or at least hitting as many cars as he had. So, yeah, Anderson really driving a smart race here, and is still pulling away from Feekins, as it looks like Lars Brun-Hansen has actually I think made his stop.
Yep, we see him on the pit lane now, pulling into the box. There he is to the attention of the Highcroft Racing crew. That'll be fuel, and since we can change tires at the same time, he'll go ahead and take 4 fresh Michelin tires. Which leaves just Ivan Gomez as our only driver in the top 4 who has not yet pitted. But we would expect to see him into the pit lane too soon. We certainly know that he cannot make it without stopping. He pitted at about the 52-minute mark, which would have left him 1 hour and 8 minutes to go, 68 minutes. And that's just too long for him to go, as we see the 89 of Bjorn Spindle into the pit lane for his final scheduled stop. He may actually be able to maintain the lead through his pit stop. Dean Allen in second, having not stopped yet.
I'd like to.
Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just curious as to how long it does take for these cars to make pit stops around here. What the pit bogey time would be, basically.
It seems like about 35 seconds in the pit lane is expected, or maybe closer to 40 seconds.
As Feekins loses more time to Anderson.
Yeah, that car is not all together at this point. I'm going to go with the theory that his mechanic said, if you've bent it that much, we'll help. And you can just drive that for the rest of the race.
But what I was thinking, though, a moment ago, is if Gomez would have made that stop, because... Yeah, we're hearing it's about 34 seconds, so you're just about right there, around 34, 35 seconds for cars in the pits. And then there we go. Ivan Gomez is going to make his stop. If he can get in and out quickly, he might still be a factor before this is all said and done.
Unfortunately for Ivan, that's only time in the box. There's still about another 20 seconds you're going to lose. There's still about another 20 seconds you're going to lose entering and exiting the pit lane apart from the time in the box. So this will very comfortably be Hampus Anderson's lead, and he should lead by about 10 seconds over Ivan Gomez, who I believe will stay in second in P2, and I believe Feekins will be down to third in P2. Ivan now exiting the pit lane. Anderson has just exited turn 1, so Anderson very decidedly in the P2 lead. But Ivan now at the exit of turn 1 entering turn 2. Feekins has not yet got to turn 1, so put Gomez into second on the cycle of pit stops, as Feekins is just self-destructing at this point.
Yeah, great work there by Gomez. My fault there on the pit stop time there, but yeah, great move for him to bring it in and get that position through pitting, and that gives Anderson yet another kind of obstacle that he can put between himself and Feekins if Feekins decides to get it together and move back towards the front, but right now it's not looking good.
Yeah, that car looking all sorts of overdriven for Gary Feekins. Just 19 minutes to go in this event as Hampus Anderson leads P2 over Ivan Gomez and Gary Feekins, as we just mentioned. Lasse Brun Hansen still fourth in P2. Ronnie Fantini, Martin Blaze, Soren Mogensen, and Jason Elrod are the P2 runners at this point. As we've just heard an ow from Zlatko Bralic, that car is very deranged indeed. That car, steering wheel about 45 degrees to the right for Zlatko Bralic, as that car is crabbing very heavily. So that's your GT1 leader that has just had a very big incident, and we're not quite sure what's caused it yet, if that was self-inflicted or if that was... Zlatko was overlapping Hannes Thaler as they exited the pit lane. So those two are right next to each other, and they should not have been close to each other.
Well, Feekins is in the pits at the moment, sorry to interrupt, but it looks like Feekins is in the pits, and it looks like he's missing a whole entire back side of the car.
That's not terribly surprised for Feekins at this point of the day, but we've just had our top two runners in GT1 just get obliterated, really, on the backstretch. Thaler has come out of it better than Bralic. Bralic is very damaged, and I believe that car will retire, as he's just now making his way to the pit lane. Hannes Thaler also enters the pit lane with very heavy damage, so that's going to put Martin Silva, who's on the pit lane at the moment, but I believe for a scheduled stop, in very good position. But he is one lap down on the GT1 leaders, so if Zlatko or Hannes can get back out in the next lap, that will be, they'll still have a chance to win this race.
Yeah, that's what happened. Feekins got caught up in that whole GT mess and actually made contact with Silva. That was why he was in. So Silva was already around, and then Feekins slammed into Silva, and then that was the end of that.
Well, that's a completely different incident then.
Oh, okay, yep. So that, yeah, and that's what, P2, P3 in the GT1s.
So that's just gone horribly wrong for the GT1s here then. That's going to be retirement for the 22 of Gary Feekins. Once the odds-on favorite to win the race now will be lucky to finish 8th in class. In GT1, all signs are pointing to Eric Hafner in the Android GM Chevy Corvette, currently third, one lap behind your GT1 leader, but both of them are either in the pit lane or have retired. For the record, the head of GT1, Zlatko Bralic and Hannes Thaler, looks like they both wanted the same piece of real estate on the backstretch just at the exit of the S's, so really a very silly incident for those two drivers. Especially as it comes to just over 15 minutes left in the race. I suspect they should have liked to finish that on the track instead of crashing each other out and gifting the win really to Eric Hafner at this point.
Yeah, it was real silly. You know, when you drive as long as these guys have, and then you just throw it away like that. I mean, it's really frustrating.
Yeah, so we expect Marco Buhin, who was your early second-place runner. Recall earlier, he was about a second behind Zlatko Bralic for the longest period of time before he made a mistake. He's now about a half a lap behind Eric Hafner, and we expect him to move into second place in GT1 shortly. In fact, next lap is when we expect that. Well, Hannes Thaler is back out on track with that deranged Corvette, and it is looking very second-hand at the moment. Bralic has retired from the race, and Silva has rejoined, again very damaged. So the Corvette's again having troubles
back towards the front. Anderson now increasing that gap to about, looks like about 8 seconds. Almost 9.
At this point, Hampus just needs to relax and take it easy around traffic because Gomez will not catch him unless he makes a mistake. Bruin Hansen is a comfortable third. Almost an entire lap over fourth place runner Ronnie Fantini.
Yeah, Anderson's really run a great race today overall, so that was really a fantastic. You know, he's done everything right. He's been patient through traffic, passed with respect, and not had any contact. And then here we go. Puts you right in the lead by about 9 seconds.
Yeah, never underestimate the value of just keeping the car clean. So the order at the top of GT1 then is Hafner, Thaler, Buhin, with Eric on, well, all three of them really on the same lap, as Hafner was just overlapped by your overall leader. Thaler has about a third of a lap lead on Buhin, but with how damaged that car is, as we see Buhin spitting into the tires. So Buhin could potentially throwing away a third place in GT1. That car is damaged heavily now. A soft impact, but that car is crabbing very badly, so broken suspension clearly there for the number 30 Lotus liveried GM Chevy Corvette, as he struggles to get the car pointed the right way. So Corvette's again right at the center of all the action and in all the wrong ways.
Yeah, and it's really crazy too because they were the quiet ones for most of the day. We hadn't heard much out of them, and now all of a sudden it seems like we can't go one incident without having a Corvette involved in the accident somehow, some way.
Yeah, so Martin Silva involved in the last incident with Gary Feekins, still on pit lane trying to get that car repaired and just now pitting out. Marco Buhin, very slow on track and has to be going towards the pit lane as that car is all sorts of sideways. And in fact, he's just about put it in the tires again, trying to recover that car to the pit lane. Eric Hafner still leads in GT1 and seems to be the only Corvette that hasn't had an issue today. Knock on wood. Hopefully not channeling our inner Murray Walker. But we usually use GT in the top 10 as a mark of attrition. Well, Eric Hafner, your GT1 leader, is running it in 8th overall, and Bjorn Spindle, your GT2 leader, is running in 10th overall. So it's not been a good day at the circuit for many at Watkins Glen.
Yeah, it certainly has been a huge war of attrition today for the few cars that we actually have had.
Yeah. As we're closing down on about 10 minutes to go in this race and everything is coming apart. Hampus Anderson still leads Ivan Gomez by about 10 seconds now. Lasse Brun Hansen still about 30 seconds further back and now has an entire lap over his closest chaser. So just 3 cars on the lead lap in P2. Hannes Thaler with that very damaged car now about 5 seconds off of the pace of his earlier laps before the incident. But still running, importantly, and that's going to be enough to secure him P2 in GT1, I believe. As Marco Buhin is in his 3rd in GT1 on the pit lane, affecting repairs. Martin Silva is back on track, but very slow. And Zlatko Brelek has retired, so only 4 GT1 runners at this point. So far, the theme for the race, for me at least, has been silly mistakes. We've had a lot of guys that have been very fast and, through really not very difficult situations, have taken themselves out of this race.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you there. It certainly has been one of those things where people, have looked like they've had the pace to get the job done, but they haven't had the mental capacity to get the job done, is to make some pretty silly moves, and that goes all the way up and down the field, whether it be LMP or GT. And it's been disappointing to watch, as I think it's really robbed us of some potential battles we could have had. But at the same point in time, it's just you gotta be able to drive fast, but you have to be smart.
Yeah, the cream has risen to the top, but it's not the cream we expected. We expected the speed to rise to the top, but being safe. Well, as Bobby Rahal would remind us, safe is fast, and you can't win the race if you don't finish the race.
Yeah, I was just in a Mazda race this morning, actually, or this afternoon, actually, and that happened. I was running fourth, and wasn't necessarily faster than the P3 car, but I just waited, and then they made the mistake. So sometimes that's all you got to do. Oh yeah, of course, but sometimes that's just what you have to do. I mean, sometimes you're not going to be the fastest guy on the track, but if you run clean, consistent races, I mean, you can almost count that people are going to make those kinds of mistakes. As if we were all true professionals, we would be out, at Spa or at Indianapolis this weekend racing cars for real. So,
well, in fairness, there weren't many professionals to be found in the Grand Am races at Indianapolis either.
So I heard. I heard that was an absolute disaster.
Yeah, it didn't go so well. I didn't have a chance to watch it, but our friends at Racer Magazine had more than enough to say about the standard of driving there, as well as some of the drivers involved.
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't watch the race myself. I watched like the first. Well, I watched probably I watched about 15 minutes in between the last 45 minutes. I watched about 15 minutes of that, and I wasn't overly impressed. I was happy that Starworks won, though. I am a Starworks fan, so.
Yeah, our old friend Juan Pablo Montoya took out not one but two cars. We had other drivers wrecking GTs that were. The prototype was many laps down in class, and the GT was battling for the lead. So, business as usual in Grand Am then.
I guess so. The Have At It boys from its mother company weighs heavy.
Yeah, and although they just added staff to the officiating portion of that, I don't think we're expecting a change in tone on that. So I suspect that we're going to continue to see the subpar driving standard continue there, but hopefully we won't see the subpar driving standard continue here in 2 weeks' time at Texas Motor Speedway, the infield road course.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. I don't think I've ever driven the infield road course there, so I look forward to watching them do it.
Yeah, if they had a full field, I'd be concerned about the size of the circuit, but with only 20 cars running, I think they'll do just fine. As we are closing down under 6 minutes remaining, Hampus Andersson still leads 10.5 seconds over Yvonne Gomez, so 99 from 71. Lasseter and Hansen still 30 seconds adrift of Yvonne. Hafner still leads in GT1 by virtue of not chucking it at the fence, really. Hannes Thaler continues to be 5 seconds off of his earlier pace, but that's sufficient for P2 at this point. Martin Silva, 2 laps further back, is in third. Marco Buhin still on the pit lane. As we see, the 9 of Rob Kuss has retired that car. So now just 15 cars running. Excuse me, no, we have 2 Fords well adrift that are still running, so 17 running. And those runners are in 4th, Ronnie Fantini, 5th, Soren Mogensen, 6th, Martin Boulay, 7, Gary Feekins, who has retired the car, so make it 16 running. Jason Elrod is 8th in P2, retired. Rob Kuss is 9th in P2, retired. Dmitry Sivkov is 10th in P2, retired. Nathan Robinson is 11th in P2, retired. And Bryce Weir was your last P2 runner, also retired. In GT1, Eric Hafner leads by a lap over Hannes Thaler. Martin Silva is 3rd, still running, but looks to be having issues of his own, again, having spun at the entrance back onto the NASCAR circuit, and has damaged that car somewhat, but not terribly heavily, mostly having difficulties with the 5 or 6 point turn it took to get it righted. Marco Buhin is 4th in GT1, still on the pit lane attempting to effect repairs. Zlatko Bralic is 5th in GT1, having retired after the incident with Marko Buhin. And Teo Bubacek is 6th in GT1, having retired very early in the race. In Ford GT, it's Bjorn Spindle leading by a half a lap over Dean Allen. David Jordan is 3rd with an inconsistent connection. Silas Greener is 4th. Andy Baker 5th. Kenny Duval 6th. And Charles Huffstetler is your only retiree in Ford GT. As we just see the 19 of Ronnie Fantini, has retired from the race with just 3 minutes left. Fantini collected by, who was that? Yep, was collected by the spinning Martin Silva that we just documented. So Fantini will drop down to 6th in class, presumably. Just over 2 minutes remaining in the race now, so Hampus Andersson on his penultimate lap has still 10.5 seconds over Ivan Gomez. Lasse Brun Hansen still 3rd, still 30 seconds back. Ronnie Fantini is in the pit lane. You have to say at this point he probably should have just continued running that car. He wouldn't have been disqualified for not observing the meatball. Soren Mogensen just now coming through turn 10. We expect him to take 4th in P2 this time by. Similarly for Martin Blais, who is just now coming back onto the NASCAR circuit, we expect him to take 5th this time by, as Ronnie Fantini will drop back to 6th in class. The 30 of Marko Buhin rejoins, so he'll at least get to the finish, but that car, much like the Confederate car of Hannes Thaler, we'll say, both involved in that backstretch incident, looking very second-hand indeed. Bjorn Spindle still dominates in GT2. And now the race is sort of relaxed a little bit as we draw to the close. Just 50 seconds remaining as Hampus Andersson comes through turn 10. And now through turn 11 as he will take the white flag with just 30 seconds to go. Now Hampus hard on the brakes through turn 1 one last time. Apexes nicely out onto the curbing at the exit of turn 1. Full throttle now up through the S's. Turn 2 is a right. Left for turn 3 into the S's, and now right again through turn 4. Now on the backstretch, full throttle. Don't even think about lifting. Now set the alarm clock, read a newspaper, because it's going to be a while before we get to turn 5, the carousel. On the brakes down in 3rd gear for the carousel. Hang on for grim death. Don't look at the tires on the outside or they'll be in them. At the exit of the carousel, now diving into the boot, into turn 6. Take a light apex to get a good shot onto turn 7. Now shooting down to turn 7, hit the brakes later than you think is possible, grab a bit of that concrete. Up out of turn 7, turn 8 now, the heel of the boot. Don't overdrive the corner, there appears to be no traffic ahead of him that will play a part. Through the concrete of turn 8, rejoin the NASCAR circuit at turn 9. Apex, be careful with the throttle. Ivan Gomez is now just 7 seconds back from 10 seconds as the Corvette allows Hampus Andersson to go by. Andersson now in turn 10. One final time and through turn 11. And that's a win for Hampus Andersson. Hampus Andersson wins P2. Eric Hafner now is just now coming up through turn 1. So Hafner will get an entire extra lap. Bjorn Spindle now coming through the S's, so still a lap to go for the GTs. Ivan Gomez took second in P2. Lasse Brun Hansen took third in P2. Soren Mogensen fourth. Martin Blaise fifth. And Roni Fantini, the first retiree in P2, is sixth. Eric Hafner now coming out of the toe of the boot towards the heel. Will catch up Bjorn Spindle just in time to hit the start-finish line, I believe. Hampus Andersson has set just 1/10 of a liter in the fuel tank at the finish line, so very close for Ivan Gomez winning this race. Gene Allen is your second place finisher in GT2, 1 lap behind Bjorn Spindle. As Bjorn Spindle now comes through turn 11 one final time under the checkered flags from the flagman, and it is a win, his second win of the season, 2 for 2 for Bjorn Spindle in GT2. Eric Hafner is your GT1 winner, which should promote him up to the points lead in GT1.
Further showing that Bjorn Spindle does no wrong.
No, apart from that incident at Road Atlanta last season in the Escorts Le Mans Series, he's been absolutely flawless. Well, it was very much a race of attrition today. We had a lot of incidents that we shouldn't have had, but the cream of the crop came through at the end. I'm Sean Pivick. Alongside me was Sean Petchin. Special thanks to our camera crew, John Westling, and to JD Webb. That's all from Watkins Glen. Bye for now.